Welcome back team to another top lane tier list video. A lot of people were requesting me to make a low elo tier list, so I've done that and more today. I've prepared 3 different tier lists, one for below emerald, which is what you see on your screen right now, one for emerald and diamond, and then a high elo tier list master plus updated from the previous video as the season's been out for a bit longer and a new patch is hit, of course. So I'll explain the reasoning and the differences between each list. I'm not going to go through every single champion one by one. I'm just going to talk more so about the tiers and why the champions are placed this way. So, starting with the below emerald tier list, the S tier champions, they are either champions that scale extremely well, so like Kale or like Mundo and Garen as well. To a lesser extent, these champions scale very well. In lower ranks, the game time goes longer, it's easier to get your items, you can get to level 19, level 20 on Kale quite consistently. So the difference between Kale in low ranks and Kale in high ranks. In high ranks, you're going to get dove on repeat by good junglers. You're going to verse people playing broken champions like Rumble to a high level. It's very hard to have a smooth early game. But in lower ranks, it's very easy. You're going to be versing champs like Set and champs like Garen. And if you have good Kale mastery, you can get your items pretty unscathed. And then the game time goes longer. You've got more chance to carry the game there. Same with Mundo. It's quite easy to get through your rough early game. And the season side laning is so important. There's a lot of extra XP. So champions like Kale and Mundo are having a very good time in low ranks. Now, champions that aren't mega scalers, like Set, like Urgot, and Mordekaiser, these 3, and Garen to a lesser extent, these 3 here, I'll talk about them for now, they really use the bonus summoner spell well. I always thought when I'd watch my students from previous seasons that people overtake TP on Urgot and Mordekaiser, and even Set sometimes. These champs are amazing to take Ignite on, some people even doing Ghost on Mord and Urgot, also good. So now you've got that freedom to know, oh, I get a TP anyway, I can take them. You could have taken the combat sums last season, it was definitely very good, but now you've got even more reason to do so. So being able to abuse extra combat sums on these champions who were already good in below emerald games, definitely really nice for them. And then Urgot, of course, can abuse the crust very easily. And I found a lot of players on Set, especially, they really struggled against people that played very safe on like Malphite or something. But now you've got access to the crust, so you can progress the game a little bit more. So they are definitely loving it. Garen is just kind of always good in lower ranks. And especially now, where you get the extra TP, it is a little bit of an indirect buff to him as well. Now for A tier, so I've dropped a couple of champions that I didn't have in A tier last season. I think I had Warwick and Olaf in S tier. The reason is they don't use this bonus XP and bonus income and bonus side laning stuff as well as the other champions. They are champions that spike really hard 1 to 2 items and you want to get a lot of work done during that time, but lower ranked players in lower ranked games, that's not really a specialty. You would think Renekton is a good example. You'd think Renekton would be a good champion in silver or bronze, but I actually don't think so, because you can win lane on any champion against silver or bronze players, and the difference between Renekton and winning lane on a champ like Garen, closing out a game on Renekton is very difficult. You need to really drive the bus, that 1 to 2 item spike, you need to make proactive calls, you need to fight every objective. And that's really hard for players to do, and it is hard to get your team involved as well. So on champs like Garen or Kale, you don't really rely on your team as much. So similar reasoning, just to a lesser extent for Olaf and Warwick. I still think Olaf can do really well with the Drain Tank build and 1v9 in lower ranked games. Same with Warwick as well, but I wouldn't call them S tier anymore. Now Malphite, I do believe you should only use as a counter pick, but a lot of the counters to Rumble, like Rumble and stuff, you never see in lower ranked games. That's definitely okay. And this champion, I'm not much of a win rate nerd. You guys know I don't really like tunneling on stats so much. This winner is just insane in silver, gold, platinum, everything. So definitely is a champion that I can't put any lower than A tier. And not just from win rate, watching my students play against him, a lot of players really struggle to get a meaningful advantage against this champion. Now for other side laners like Yorick, like Ness, the side lane value goes up. And these champions do scale relatively well. I would say not as good as others, but you know, they definitely spike quite hard and use that bonus over leveling well. And the extra side lane pressure, very good for them. Now Zahin, he wasn't out last time I made a low elo tier list, and some students have asked me about him. So Zahin, I actually think he's relatively good for low ranked players to play. I'd put him in a similar kind of category as Darius, where champions like Garen, Mord, and Set, and Urgot, these will always be like the big 4, the big 5 to play for low-ranked students to learn the game, and you have a lot of agency. Zahin's not quite as simple. The difference between them and Zahin is Zahin's not very proactive. He's a really good punisher, like Darius. He's really good at punishing your opponent's mistakes in lane, and teamfights you have to play quite patient. And a lot of low rank players are not patient. They see action on their screen, they blow all their abilities straight away. That's not what you want to do on Zahin. So I'm not going to put him S tier, but he scales really well. You can teamfight, you can side lane. He's relatively strong in lane into the lower rank meta, right? The weakness to Zahin is champs like Kennen and champs like Aurora and all these bullshit range champions at Jace that are not fun to verse, but nobody can play them very well in below Emerald games. So the most annoying thing you're going to face is some Teemos and some Quins. So probably if you ban Teemo, there's nothing really too challenging for you on this champion. Now for B tier. So part of the reason why some of these champs are here, they don't side lane that well. So champs like Darius don't really side lane that well. Champs like Wukong, not that good in side laning. The ones that do side lane quite well, a reason why they're lower is just their ease of execution is not quite there. Gwen is not as easy to execute and win games on and mechanically play compared to like a Kayle. The kit has a lot of nuance to it. I think the kit is pretty simple, but using the W really well is very difficult. Even my high rank Gwen students really struggle to use W well. I think this champion does really well in sort of B tier. I think if you're a really good Gwen, you will carry a ton of games in lower ranks, so I do vouch for her. But I'm not saying, a Smurf playing on Gwen is going to be B tier. Of course, that's ridiculous. A gold player in a gold game on Gwen, a bronze player on a bronze Gwen in a bronze game. I think B tier is a very fair placement, even though she does use the bonus XP and gold and all that stuff very, very well. I just think the ease of execution is not quite there on her compared to all the champs on the top shelf here. Now, Trundle is interesting to me. I thought Trundle was going to be a little bit stronger. I was going to say, I thought he'd be really good. It's just the most easy game plan in the game. I think out of all top laners in the game, he has the most clear game plan. Just run down side lane without dying ideally, and just destroy towers with Hullbreaker, right? It's very, very clear. And I thought this season, side lane value going up, he would increase. But I just haven't seen him have that much success. I still think champions that can play side lane, but are also, have a bit of agency in teamfights as well, are a bit better than him, even in lower ranked games where side laning is important. Now, any other champ, I'm not going to go through all of them. Range champions, these ones are not as hard as champs like Aurora or Jace, and people do struggle against them. I think Varus and Heimerdinger are quite straightforward to play. Luckily, no one really plays him. I do think if the player base was a bit higher, the champions might get nerfed because they are quite frustrating to play against. But I think B tier is a fair placement because winning a game, even though winning lane is easy, you can do it with your eyes closed on these champions. Winning a game is a little bit difficult. You will ruin your team comp as well. So B tier is a fair placement. Now, Lowy, B tier, side lane value increase, and players just don't know how to verse her. I feel like that's very fair placement for her. And some champions that should be, in theory, really good. So these are champions what I would call Smurf S tier champs, right? So if you're playing in lower ranked games as a Smurf, I hate this example, but these champs would be S tier, like Riven, Camille, Fiora, Jax, right? These champs would be amazing, but a actual gold player on them, or a silver player, or blah, 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 in those games, I'd say around C tier is fair. Because the ease of execution is just not there. Because you're thinking in theory, right, more XP, longer games, Camille and Fiora should be amazing, but their ease of execution is just not there. They're too difficult, so C tier is very fair. Maybe in Platinum, they could sneak up to B tier, but I think, this is a below Emerald tier list, so C tier is a fair placement. The reason Jax is a little bit up here is because I feel like his kit is easier to use than these three here. I still think a lot of players struggle on Jackson lane and certain matchups and stuff like that, but overall getting value from the kit is a little bit easier than these three below him. Now these tanks, Ornn just uses the bonus XP really, really well. Very easy to play. I'd say ease of execution's there. Same with Singed as well. I think proxying got buffed a bit because people don't know that if you chase someone, it kind of hinders your quest a bit. So definitely these are good placements for them too. Now for D tier. So some champions you might be curious about. The big factor here is ease of execution. So Cassante and Rumble and Aurora and Cassiopeia. These are champs that are all A or S tier usually in the high elo. But they're just way too hard to play for below Emerald. And even if you play them well, they're not even that good in those games. Because you can't side lane very well. Side lane is so important in lower ranked games. So I don't think these champs are good in those games. Same with Vladimir as well. Now, champs that could be good, but are just too difficult, like Irelia, like Yone, similar reasoning, ease of execution's not there. And then champs like Shen and Poppy, just way too team reliant. You don't really use the bonus leveling that well, so definitely they deserve to be in D tier. Moving on to our Emerald plus Diamond tier list, and some of these champions were definitely hard to place, as if it was a Diamond only list, some champions might be higher or lower, same applies for Emerald, but I'll explain my reasoning as I go. So a good example would be Riven. If this was an Emerald only tier list, I'd probably put Riven low A somewhere, but because she's Thanos S tier and Diamond, high Diamond especially, Master Plus S tier as well, S tier is where she's going to live. Now, Kayle and Gwen, I'd say, are two of the top dogs this season for Emerald Diamond. They scale extremely well, and if you're an Emerald or Diamond player, you should be able to have consistent early games quite often, but the players that you're versing are still not quite at the level where they can punish you consistently. So, for example, let's say I blind pick, Kayle's too easy, let's say I blind pick Gwen in a Chow lobby. I'm probably gonna verse some cracked player playing Rumble or Jace or some very brutal lane bully that's gonna give me a very hard time, and the jungler will be good if I take a bad trade, or if, even if I play optimally and my wave's in a weird state because they have control, the jungler will punish me, shut me behind early game. Not saying those champions can't work in higher ranks, some people still use them as counter picks really well, but as a stock standard blind, very hard. And I like to do my tier list as if you're playing them quite frequently, or Malphite would always be S tier if you only use them as a counter pick. By Kayle and Gwen even blinding, I still feel if you're a Kayle main or a Gwen main, you can get away with it. Not every single game, of course. Some games you might verse, they Renekton, at least duo queue her in Discord having a good time diving you on repeat, but in most cases you can get through the early game unscathed, scale like a monster. They use some of the new items well as well. Now, Urgot, you can see on my tier list, I rate him really highly. I swear he's a sleeper OP champion. He's so good in every elo bracket, actually, and that's pretty rare. For example, a champion like Ambessa is S tier Thanos unbeatable in challenger lobbies, but in Bronze and Iron, she's pretty weak. Even in Emerald Diamond, you can see I have her quite low. Urgot's just good everywhere. Definitely a really strong champion. I do kind of feel like you need to main him, or at least have him top 2 in your pool, though. Now for A tier, Zihin might stand out too. I feel like Zihin is a really good champion similar to Gwen in a way, where if nothing disastrous happens early game, you are Thanos. You're so strong, you scale very well, spike really hard on clear item spikes. 3 items level 16, you got that second awakening like a lot of bruisers, but on Zihin it's on another level, and he's one of the best team fighting bruisers in the game, so I really like this champion for this bracket especially because I feel like the players can start to get good enough that they can get through the early game. But the players you're versing are not good enough for ranged top laners. So that might sound like it contradicts each other, but ranged top laners, to play them to the level, to punish a melee champion consistently and have really on-point spacing, is way more difficult. And I don't really see that until GM or Chow. There's a really big difference between a Master Cannon and a Chow Cannon. You say that about every champion, but spacing is a skill that doesn't really reach a good level until GM and Chow, in my opinion. And Zihin only really struggles against ranged top laners. He does good into pretty much anything else. He maybe doesn't win against everything else, but he's happy. Let's just say his hardest melee counter, something like Jax. The matchup's actually fine. Grass bone plating, take short trades, it's not an issue. The main issue with this champion that he faces is really, really good range top laners. But you're not going to worry about that in Emerald and Diamond. You could probably ban Kayle though if you verse it very frequently. I wouldn't say that's a very hard matchup, but if the Kayle plays well, she can scale quite nicely. Now, Olaf, Darius, Set, the Bash boys, these champions, I'd say high A tier is fair. They can spike really early into the game. Darius scales better than the other two, but these champions have a bit more power in the mid game, so definitely you can use them quite well. A champion that stands out to you might be Singed. If you're Emerald or Diamond and you play Singed, you must be a one-trick though, so this is only counting one-trick champions. Champs like Ambessa, I don't really count them as like a one-trick only champion. Everyone plays Ambessa. Singed, you pretty much have to be a one-trick to play this champion, but if you are, I feel like he's kind of like Urgot for me in a way. He's just sleeper really good, and not a lot of players play him. I'd say he's not as, I don't want to sound too mean to our Singed players out there, but he's not as versatile as Urgot. I feel like if you're good at Urgot, you could probably play other champions okay. If you're good at Singed, good luck moving on to anything else. You're a Singed player for life. Now, some other champions would be Jax and Fiora. These champions, I feel A tier is a really good spot for them. I feel like you're still struggling some matchups on Jax. Fiora as well is still very hard, but you can imagine a high diamond Fiora one trick could definitely make this champion, work consistently in those games. Now, Mundo and Varus and stuff, I feel like you should mainly use them as counters, but they can work as blind picks anyway. Volibear and Kled, similar to Singed in a way, only really one tricks play them, but they spike really hard early game, and if you do play these champions up to Emerald, up to Diamond, you probably know all your matchups pretty well. Now B tier, so champs that might stand out to you, Ornn. I feel like he just uses the bonus XP so well. He's very solid. He doesn't have high carry potential, so I wouldn't really recommend you to start playing Ornn to be honest. If you're already an Ornn main, it's just a good season for you, but he still lacks that agency, that carry potential. He's just very solid. He's very easy to get by in lane. Your team fight reference points are very clear. Your job in the game is very clear, but you don't have high carry potential. If your team is doing very poorly, it's pretty hard to win on Ornn compared to champions like Jax or champions like Olaf or Sehen, where you might have these moments where you can carry the game. Now, some other options, these range top laners, Vayne, Teemo, and Quinn. I'd say, again, like I talked about before, the spacing level is just not quite there in Emerald Diamond yet for me to put these champions any higher. Of course, if you play Vayne and you're like a range top main, you versus a Garen or something, it's probably going to be pretty easy. But I just mean more so in general, if you pick these champions often, you have to play a lot better than your opponent, I'd say. And again, the level of play required to space these champions to a high level, not quite there yet. Mill, I really wanted to put her a bit higher, but I still feel like she has the same problem. She just gets obliterated in lane by everything, so she's not going to be A tier for a while. Let's hope Riot gives her a cheeky little buff soon. Shen, I did move up as well. My reasoning is similar to Singed. If you're Emerald Diamond playing Shen, you're a one-trick. You do not play Jax Olaf and you whip out the Shen in a good game. That's not going to happen. You are a Shen one-trick. And the Shen one-tricks are good at their matchups. And I feel like one thing I talked about in the below Emerald tier list, people aren't really good down there at pinging, at communicating, at driving the bus, speeding up the game. I feel like if you're a Diamond Shen one-trick, you're probably pretty good at pinging. I would hope so. You don't just play Shen to, isolated. Shen is very much playing the map. So I'd say in those brackets, I would expect a high level of communication to be able to execute this champion. Aurelia, even though she's real hard to execute, again, if this was Emerald, I'd probably put her C. But because this is also Diamond, I feel like an Aurelia one-trick can do quite well. Definitely strong at the moment. Now, some other champions, some of them might be lower than you'd expect. I'd say ease of execution. I feel like to play Gangplank to a high level is not going to quite be at that expectation in Emerald Diamond quite yet. And same with most of the champions in C tier. Like like Akali, like Yone, like Jace and Bessa. Even though these champions are quite good, not all the ones I mentioned, but especially Jace and Bessa, even Akali really good. The execution is just not quite there. If you were to show me a game with an Emerald guy that's playing Akali, because she's good this season, versus a Emerald, like a set player, even though it's Akali favorite matchup, I feel like the set would win every time. So I feel like Akali belongs in C tier. And then champs like Rengar and Cassiopeia, just way too hard. Way too hard to put them any higher than that. Now D tier, the champions down here are either too hard to execute, or just not good in the brackets, or both. So K'Sante, a lot of players want me to put K'Sante even higher, but I'm not going to do that. The ease of execution is just not there. You have to be insane at laning to play this champion and make him work in solo queue. He's been nerfed like 400 times. He's still a brick wall unbeatable in lane, but to actually squeeze the value out of this champion's kit, you have to play to a really high level. You've got a really good spacing range advantage, but it's very small. You have to use it well. And of course, use your abilities well. Even if you do, you're still a full tank with no engage and no kind of threat in solo queue. Not really what you want here. Another champion you might be curious about is Rumble. Why is Rumble going to be? You'll see in the high-low tier list, placed really highly, and he's down here. I just really feel there are a couple champions that I truly believe should only be played Master Plus, and there's Rumble and K'Sante. That's my strong opinion, because I just never see them have success anywhere else. Yes, I've seen people win games on them, of course, but every time I watch these champions in Emerald or Diamond or Bronze or Gold, doesn't matter, I just don't feel like they're going to be able to climb consistently. It's very rare. I think I've seen one student go from Emerald to Master with Rumble. Other than that, almost never see success from these two champions. But other than that, I'd say tier list looks pretty stock standard. Champions that do quite well, that scale quite well and can use side lane quite well, like these guys up here, would normally do quite well. Or champions that use bonus XP very well, like a Darius, like a Ornn, they're in a good spot as well. And champions that get heavily rewarded from champ mastery and are kind of one-trick centered, like a Singed, like a Volibear even, a Kled as well, they also get weighted a bit more highly as well here. And finally, we have our high-low tier list, and this is for Masters Plus only. So I've definitely made some changes since 2 weeks ago, notably Rumble is up to S tier again. Now the reason for that is even though side laning value has increased with the game, in high rank games side lane is not as important. You can imagine people are quite good at defending turrets, jungle supports are good at punishing people that push too much, so Rumble doesn't really suffer as much as he might do in silver or in gold. And the champion is still Thanos, completely busted in lane, unbeatable by melee champions, spikes extremely hard in the early game, and most of the time the games are decided by a Baron fight between 20 and 22 minutes when Rumble is still very, very strong. So he doesn't really run into that problem of getting hard outscaled on the side. In high rank games where jungle supports are good and the Rumble players are so good, they do get leads in lane quite consistently. Now, some champions in A tier. So Gwen and Zahin, I think, have been, slowly getting promotions every time because they're quite consistent in lane and in mid game. Their role in the game is very solid. They scale extremely well. They use the levels really well, and they will get a little bit behind against good players playing the S tier champs, of course. But I still feel like they can get by a little bit better than they used to, especially with the new home guards and stuff like that. One thing I forgot to mention as well is some champions benefit more from being able to take combat sums a bit more. So you might have seen on my previous video, I did talk about take TP in the similar games that you did before, with some exceptions to matchups. Now there were champions who some players on certain champions that did underuse combat sums, notably champs like Urgot, champs like Rumble. People were taking TP too often in my opinion. Now people are more brave and they're taking Ignite on Rumble more, Ignite on Kennen more, and definitely having some success as well. And there's definitely some matchups where you will take Ignite now this season where you wouldn't do it last season, like I talked about before, and Rumble and Kennen are benefiting from that. Now some other champions that I've moved around, I put Urgot back up to A tier. I feel like he's just so consistent every elo bracket. He does have some hard matchups of course, and he is easily kiteable in certain comps, like most melee bruisers, but definitely an A tier champion. Now for B tier. So some champions you can see are in similar positions. I moved Vayne up a bit. I was really close to putting Vayne in A tier. I think week 1 I would have, but people started catching on how to play against it well, so it doesn't really catch people off guard anymore than you threw it with the new build. So I think B tier is fine. Really broken as a counter pick if you pick her in the right spots. But remember, I don't do my tier list as counter pick only, or our boy Malphite would be up the top. But he has to be down here, because if you blind pick Malphite and you verse some Grandmaster or Challenger Rumble player or something, you're going to have a very, very bad time. Now, some other champion, Ryze, I moved up a bit. Ryze, I do want to put him A tier as well. I'm going to keep him B for now. I still feel like he's a little bit of a comp ruiner, and even though he's a range champ, he's not that strong in lane. Compared to a champ like Kennen, who's very, very strong in lane, or Cassio or Quinn, he's just very solid. You can clear waves and stuff like that, of course. So I do, and he does use some of the new items well, definitely. But I feel like he's a little bit of a comp ruiner. You can imagine with Ryze top, Orianna mid, your comp's just a little bit hideous. So I think B tier is definitely a fair placement. Of course, if you use him as a counter, it would be higher. But again, we are not counter pick only in this house. We do get blue side sometimes. Now, some other champions that I've moved around. I would say it does look pretty similar. I think my day 1 predictions were pretty good for the most part. Tryndamere I was wrong on. The nerf that they did to him when they're rebalancing the crit items definitely hurt him way more than expected. So I think Tryndamere, and I haven't talked about him on my other list, but I think he's just underpowered at the moment, which may seem like good news to most of you, except for our Tryndamere players. He is just a little bit underpowered at the moment. In theory, he should be good on the new season with the crit and side lane changes, but the nerf just hurt him too much. So C tier is definitely a fair placement for him. But other than that, I feel like the tier list looks pretty similar than the one before. The champions that are just very consistent. And as you know, for Master Plus games, a big thing I value for how I place my champions is consistency. Consistency in lane and the game. Jace and Bessa, Rumble. You can pick them almost any game, almost any team comp, and they are going to be perfectly fine. There's no matchup where they're guaranteed to get behind or anything like that. There's no team comp where there's a terrible pick. Of course, if you have full AP comp and pick Rumble, something stupid like that. But for the most part, these champions are just very, very consistent. And Riven here, even though she's not a consistent queen like these champions, she's just overpowered numbers-wise. I would say champ's just too strong, so S tier is fair for her. But keep in mind, only one Tricks player. Everyone plays these 3 champions, so there is that factor as well. Now, champs like Zahin, Gwen Fiora, Mega Scalers, and they're also quite consistent too. So definitely they belong up there. And then some champs that is very, very punishing and brutal in lane in the hands of good players like Cassiopeia, like Gangplank, like Quinn, like Kennen. They're definitely good. They do have some comps or some matchups where they really struggle, which is why they're A tier. Kennen is a champion I promoted. I definitely feel like he can use Ignite a bit better. And also the side laning thing, which just wasn't as impactful as I expected. Day 1, I really expected side laning value to be higher, because my first kind of few games it was, but players have adapted now. Jungle supports are punishing you if you try to go for the crust and stuff like that. And you just have to fight a Baron anyway. So champs like Kennen and Rumble, who win lane and carry team fights, definitely are still very, very supreme and a high level of player. You'll probably notice from watching pro games, the meta is very similar. Still Mbessa, still Rumble, champs like that. Gwen, So solo queue in high ranks is kind of similar as well, with some exceptions like of weirdo solo queue champions like Teemo and stuff like that, who no one really knows how to beat in lane, and the Teemo players have played every matchup that you see 100 times, so they do have that advantage as well, and there's not many hard lanes for Teemo, Quinn, Cassiopeia either, so they definitely have that kind of one-trick buff as well. Other than that, I feel like the tier list is pretty similar. I'm quite happy with them, but if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you for the next one.